shall roam through the vastness of space, no place like our home. Hoist the sails high, let the solar winds blow. This cosmic sea shanty is a tale we all know. Navigating constellations, charting the unknown. With the stardust in our veins, we are never alone. From the Milky Way shores to the depths of black holes, we'll sing our sea shanty as the universe unfolds. Sail up high to the galactic sky on our moonlit voyage. We'll keep reaching high. We're sailors of the cosmos, a crew full of might. Let's sing this sea shanty under starry night's light.
Hoist the sails and let the wind guide our way. We're the spacemen sailing the cosmic bay. From Jupiter to Saturn we'll deliver our freight on our starship, sailing through the interplanetary strait. With a hardy crew and a cargo of dreams, through the nebula's mist we'll forge our own schemes. In the vastness of space where no man has been, we'll navigate, chart the unexplored galactic highway. Heave ho, mateys, upon the starry sea. We're the spacemen sailing through infinity. With our voices loud and our spirits free, we'll voyage across the celestial sea. Oh, voyage across the celestial sea.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the stream. I hope everybody is having a fantastic day. Luke, good morning, and the song's name is Moonlit Voyage. However, it is an AI-generated song, so the only copy available is the one that I have. Good morning, Onofre, Haskell, Nigel. Hope you're all having a fantastic day. Yania, good morning. Good morning, Gary. Yes, time travel is a very tricky thing. It seems that my internet is acting a bit iffy today, so there might be some problems with the stream. Just warning everybody ahead of time. But more importantly, coffee. It's a nice, miserable autumn day here. No, I'm doing well. Doing well. Doing as well as can be. Fair enough, Luke. Fair enough. Yania? Fair enough. I mean, Wi-Fi being horrible is never great. Yes, Billy Bob Space Trucker. I think it was my first HFY series. I could be wrong. I'm glad you're liking it, The Lord of the Storm. A lot has changed in the last 5 years, so putting a new spit and polish on old stories makes sense to me. Fair enough, Samantha. I'm glad you made it. I'd love to know how my glasses get so dirty every day, but I only notice it when I turn the lights on in front of me. Well, it's simple. Coffee is the answer to everything. All questions. The answer's coffee. Or cheese, but mostly coffee. Yeah, I do. This guy. That's who I hired to clean my glasses. This guy. He's got the worst boss. Worst boss imaginable. Good morning, Dee. Hope you're doing well. I'm glad people enjoyed that story, you know. I do not know whether I'll do series again. I want to kind of just keep it to TFOS. The response to the re-TFOS is okay. Not great, but okay. But the channel is in a bit of a lull at the moment, so anything and everything helps.
Chasing dreams that sparkle like stars shining bright. I'll serenade the heavens with my cosmic lullaby. A space shanty melody as I say my last goodbye.
that is an acting job that most people will relate to and have done multiple times in their life. Pretending to work. It's an age-old tradition. Alright, let's get some work going, I think. Fair enough, Haskell. Fair enough. And who dare put 5% blood in your caffeine stream? Yeah, I don't know. Nigel, I don't know. I'm not going to point fingers. Mainly because I have no evidence one way or the other. But what I can say is they're currently trying to outdo each other. And when there is no physical limitations, you can just post as much as you want. So, there is that. Good morning, Captain. Hope you're doing well. Apostrophe. Is that an apostrophe? That is an apostrophe. Confused the hell out of me. Right, okay. Good evening, Amtrue. Hope you're doing well. Yep, well, technically a lot of them are fall under the reused content, I think. So, who knows? Especially if they're using the same AI voice for the same stories, it would definitely fall under reused content. Good morning, Valdemar, too. I hope you're doing well. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Well, almost all of my original stories were legal. I'm actually just doing it in chronological order. Same order I did it originally. He was one of the first authors to say yes to me. Thank you very, very much for the $50 super chat, Michael Casbart. I'm glad you are enjoying the content, and thank you very much. It is very much appreciated. Well, one of the things you need to remember is it's not all necessarily intentional or intentionally plagiarized. So an author will see a story, read it, and be like, I want to put my own twist on that story. And they'll write a very similar story. So it seems to go in cycles where a lot of similar stories get released close to each other because it's the trope of the day sort of thing. Good evening, Donald. I hope you're doing well today. Nigel's probably a gifted sub or gifted membership. It means that you are a channel member. I know recently there have been several rounds of gifted subs, or memberships, so you probably received one of them. Fair enough, Captain, fair enough. I mean, some of them, a lot of the ones that do respond to word prompts, they do put that in the story or description somewhere. Good morning, Brian. I hope you're doing well. Fair enough, Gary. That is quite funny. Agronauts. That works. Good morning, Jason. I hope you're having a fantastic morning. Day. Well, I'm glad she enjoys the content, Haskell. Say hello back to her for me. Alrighty, I think we're done with all the tippity tapping. Good morning, Lupus. Hope you're doing well. Alrighty. Recording mode. Green screen activated. Recording video. Recording audio. Alrighty. And here we go. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called Sand and Steel, written by Obvious AD 4159. I smell blood. I smell blood. Steel. Aggression without malice. How long has it been? Sheila opened her eyes, yawning and stretching her arms. How long has it been since I've seen a human in these halls? A few centuries? A millennia? She rubbed her eyes, adjusted her hair. Presentation was everything. As the lost soul trapped in her dungeon walked closer, she sprung from her vessel, spreading both her arms open, towering over the cloaked man. Welcome to my humble abode, mortal. Consider yourself blessed to stand before me. What? Where the fuck am I? The soldier stood in the middle of what seemed like a desert temple, looking around. The teleportation seal that burned a hole through his uniform began to fade from his chest. He walked around the halls filled with sand and various riches, looking for an exit, checking his equipment. All of his instruments seemed to no longer work. The human knew that he was very far from the battlefield that he was on previous to teleportation. Fucking elves and their magic bullcrap, he cussed, walking into the main chamber of the Forgotten Temple. Welcome to my humble abode, mortal. A female voice tore through the century-long silence. The man turned around, clenching his fist and aiming his left arm at the source of the sun. The man turned around, clenching his fist and aiming his left arm at the source of such sudden voice. She was easily as tall as a two-story house. She was easily as tall as a two-story house. Long sable hair, which flowed like it had a mind of its own, cascading down her back in waves. Her body curved like the desert dunes that hid the temple, and skin kissed by the sun and heat. Was decorated in ornamental jewelry. Eyes, the color of gold that filled the chamber, shined as she did. Eyes, the color of gold that filled the chamber, shined as she. Eyes, the color of gold that filled the chamber, shined as she looked down at the man. The human did not seem impressed. His initial shock had worked off pretty quickly as he looked the massive woman up and down. You don't have a shadow, he said, matter-of-factly, before picking up a small stone on the dusty floor and throwing it at her. The rock went right through her. Just as I thought. More magic or illusions or whatever. Props for the entrance, though. Real showstopper. You dare! Sheila roared, raising her fist threateningly. But the deadpan stare of the mortal made her realize intimidation wouldn't work. Human, you fail to realize how fortunate you are. You stand before the great Sheila, immortal queen of the dunes. I've made cowards into warriors, beggars into kings, mended broken hearts with harems of women. All you need to do is say your wish. All you need to do is say what you wish for, and I shall make it true. Her size changed as she moved closer to the man, now only slightly taller than him, floating around the room like a cloud on sand. How long was it since you've had a woman melt in your arms? The genie whispered, circling him. Her floating turned to slow, deliberate walking as she gained more and more solid shape. Her floating turned to a slow, deliberate walking as she gained a more solid shape. Like the trained seductress, Sheila rubbed against his left arm, feeling the warm metal under her fingers. Or perhaps you would like your arm and eye back, or more pieces of gold than there are grains of sand in the desert. Just say what's in your heart. Wisher! The man ignored the floating apparition, instead looking around the chamber, looking for where she had come from. Why are you even here? He asked. Why are you even here? He asked. Oh, my tale is a tragic one. The scholar I have helped become a powerful archmage imprisoned me here. Sheila floated over an old-looking vase, theatrically falling to her knees and wrapping her arms around it. Now I wait here for centuries for someone so selfless to grant me freedom at last. She batted her eyelids and gave him a sad look. So, you're a Jady, huh? Ha! I've always expected you guys to have beards and, be blue. The soldier said, chuckling to himself. You grant wishes, but twist them in a way, so someone would learn a lesson or something, right? What? No, human. Where'd you get that idea from? Sheila was caught off guard by the question, floating back over to the man. Don't tell me that you have no desires. I've heard that 1,000 times. I know it's a lie every single time, she hissed. So be a good boy. Save us both time and drop the act. What do you wish for? Riches, power, influence, woman, your limbs back? The genie looked into the man's eyes, frowning at eyes looking back at her. You fucking warhound, she spat on the ground beside him, making a face of disgust and disappointment. First human in several centuries, and is a homicidal cripple with no will to live. Bark, 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 genie, mocked the human. You can try any angle you want. You can draw any angle you want. I'm not falling for it. I know how you all work. I will wish for gold or something, and you will turn me into a golden statue. The man pointed to several statues of different creatures that decorated the corners of the main chamber. They don't look very happy. I mean, who makes a statue with its arms raised up in horror? Ever heard of artistic expression? The genie hissed back bitterly as she walked back to her vase and sat beside it. The soldier rubbed the back of his sunburned neck. With his mechanical left hand. Man, I wish, he mumbled. Sheila's head snapped back to look at him, a devious smirk of triumph plastered on her face, only to be met with a human's crap-eating grin and an index finger on his good hand pointed at her. Ah, got you, he laughed. If there's truly nothing you want, get out of here. I want to go back to my slumber. Leave this place. Live your whole miserable life knowing that you could have become more than you ever imagined. She waved her hand, motioning for him to get out of her sight. So, which way's the nearest settlement? He asked the soldier. The genie shrugged. No idea. I've been in here for so long. You know, when you're a genie, people sort of come to you. Now, if you wish to know, then I might be able to help. What the human didn't know is that the more wishes the genie grants, the closer she is to her freedom. So Sheila's attempts to get him to make a wish weren't only for the sake of malice. However, he was not wrong in his assumption that genies are not benevolent, and they, due to their superiority complex that stems from their almost omnipotent powers, often grant wishes in a twisted fashion. We seem to be at an impasse, Genie. I need to get out of here and find my way back to my troops, and you need to fulfill your sick pleasure of screwing over another moron. Since I don't intend to just die in the desert, I will take a gamble and have you grant my wish, the man said. Sheila almost leapt with joy, grinning ear to ear, once more assuming her towering and imposing form, her voice booming through the chamber. Splendid choice, human. Now speak. Tell mighty Sheila your wish. My wish for you, the all-powerful Sheila, is that you become such that the vase can no longer hold or bind you, the man said. Sheila roared with laughter, the sand from the desert pouring into the temple, wrapping around her like a sandstorm. The vase shook and trembled, cracks appearing all over, as the genie swirled and laughed, relishing the thought of her soon-to-come freedom. You fool! You think this will grant you some favor with me, that I'll owe you something? That I'll owe you... That I'll owe you something, she roared, her golden eyes shining through the vortex of sand and dust. Nonsense! You'll be the first one I turn into a corpse for your insolence towards me. This temple will serve as your tomb. The restraints on her wrists fell to the ground with a clang, before turning into sand and being sucked back onto the rattling vase. The vortex soon too began getting sucked in. The genie soon followed. What's going on? This shouldn't be happening. Your wish, my freedom, she screamed before finally being pulled into the vase. The imprisoning vase shattered violently a second later, ceramics and sand flying in every direction, causing the soldier to cover his face with his metal left arm. As the dust settled, he waved his other arm a bit, clearing the view in front of him, followed by some coughing. I am free, the genie said, sitting where the vase once was. Her body seemed tangible compared to before. She looked over at the man, covering her chest with both arms. The woman looked the same as before, and the amount of clothes, or lack thereof, had not changed either. Don't just stand there, you oaf. Toss me a skirt. Don't just stand there, oaf. Toss me a curtain or something to cover myself, Sheila hissed an order at the man. The soldier grabbed a piece of cloth from a pile of various riches that littered the chamber and tossed it over to the woman. Sheila could not fully process what she was feeling. Liberation, shock, anger, embarrassment. She never felt so exposed before, despite wearing nothing but her ornamental jewelry for millennia. Your wish. I was to be free. The vase is gone, broken. My prison is broken. Yet my power, The genie could feel power surging inside her. But it was different. There, the man patted her on the shoulder, and she jumped at his touch. She jumped like his touch was a cynic. Her body moved, her brain still processing what just happened. He touched me. He touched me. The thought overwhelmed her mind as she wrestled with the realization that she was no longer intangible. Extending her right hand, she focused her magic. The feeling of it coursing through her was so alien, it made her skin shudder. Wither to dust me, gone from my sight, Sheila shouted, as the torrent of sand hit the man and launched him backwards into a pile of sand. So, have we calmed down? Solon asked, sitting down next to Sheila, but still keeping some distance. Don't patronize me, human, she sighed, turning her head to look at the man, as he was shaking sand from his metal arm. My power has gone so much that I could not even end a pitiful human, she frowned. The sun was sending its rays through the holes in the temple ceiling, bathing both of them in light. The former genie watched for the first time as her own shadow stretched across the floor. How did you trick me? She whispered. Pretty simple, answered the soldier, grinning at his own ingenuity and the fact that it actually worked. I wish that you became such that you get free. The vase imprisons genies like yourself. So through my wish, you got changed from a genie to a human? He ended his explanation with a question, looking at her long and pointy ears. Desert folk. They used to be the most common in these lands. Hell, they even built this temple, Sheila replied. As for your magic, don't worry, I'm immune to magic. Almost all of us are that came here. Almost all of us who came here are. Solan patted her on the back. This time, she didn't jump away, accepting the reassuring gesture. Came here. I agree, you are far different from any human that I've met before. You have metal welded to your body, and you aren't going insane. And you have no magic either.
To keep a long story short, many centuries ago, humans from here found a way to open gates to other places, to expand their civilization. They would pop up, use their extraordinary powers to help civilizations grow, in turn being worshipped as gods or demigods or wizards and crap. Issue is, not every world they came to was equally attuned to magic as their world. In case of my Earth, the attunement was so bad it actually drained them of their magic. So they helped what little they could and decided to leave before they completely lost their powers, leaving the gates they constructed behind them, the soldier explained. Despite leaving pretty early on in our own history, they helped our civilization stand on its own 2 feet. That was enough to have us continue progressing on our own. Eventually, with technology, we reverse-engineered the gates and went to meet our gods and demigods of old folk tales. Coming here, we realized that there is a lot more species beyond humans, like elves and dwarves, who weren't too happy with the reverse gate situation. Humans are actually pretty rare in this world, it seems. The others tried to shoo us away, but once we became aware of how much land this world has, and all of the resources that create energy without pollution, well, we had to stick around. The natives aren't too quick to embrace democracy, though. Solon knocked on his left shoulder and made a clang sound. Sheila listened to the explanation, nodding her head. As insane as it sounded, she felt like the pieces fell together so well that it made sense. Or at least, it felt good to believe in this crazy story, over accepting that a human was screwed over. Over accepting that a human has screwed her over twice in one day. So, what do we do now? She asked. Well, priority number 1 is getting outside of this desert, finding a settlement or something,
the man replied, getting up and patting the dust off his pants. I think there used to be a settlement to the west. She got up, putting on a dusty... I think there used to be a settlement west of here. She got up, putting on a dusty, old toga-like dress that she took from one of the golden statues. Should not be too far, maybe a day or so.
Oh, you're tagging along, almighty queen of the Judes,
Solon grinned. Feck off. Thanks to you, my only alternative is starving to death in this temple, so yes, I'm coming with you. Better take good care of me, Solon. She huffed, walking past him. Even in her normal form, Sheila was still an entire head taller than the human.
Solon!
The soldier followed as they both stepped into the unforgiving sun, wrapped in cloaks made from dusty gold cloth they found in the temple. She pointed at his mechanical left arm. Yes, that is what I've decided to name you.
But I already have a name,
the man protested. Not in this world, you don't. Now stop being difficult and walk. Sheila huffed, her superiority complex back in full effect. The soldier sighed, choosing not to argue.
The former genie seemed to have got over a new change pretty quickly,
he thought to himself, as the pair left the temple behind them. End of story. Back to work mode. Clickety-click, clickety-click. Good morning, Matty D. I don't think I've greeted you yet. Maybe I have. But a double greeting if I have, and a single greeting if I haven't. Kershblamo and Kershblamo. Move this over here. Well, I'm glad you guys enjoyed that. Yeah, very much. Maybe I should just turn my microphone like this. Can I do it? Just face the microphone directly at the keyboard. Then you can get real ear enjoying ASMR. Or you want to punch a screen, one or the other. Unfortunately, I fall into the second camp with ASMR, which is I want to punch my screen. Which is silly, because it's the earphones making the noise, not the screen. Alrighty. Well, Lupus, that is what chat decided the voice is called. My voice word, well, the way I identify that voice is, what is that? It was, snooty open mouth speaking with roof. That's my explanation of the voice. Chat decided to call it the Spiffing Brit voice, so there you have it. So any weird stuff happening down here is entirely chat's fault, not mine. Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm management. Management shifts blame. I cannot be an efficient, high-level member of my organization if I do not shift blame continuously, because nothing's my fault. It's always somebody else's fault. And this is definitely not my fault. This is definitely chat's fault. I remember because I wrote a memo about it, and I sent it out to all the employees, and then wondered why I was sending myself emails, memos, mental notes. Run away? Hide under the table? Pretend I didn't say anything? Shift blame. This is an AI-generated version of me causing me trouble. That's what I'll say. She won't believe me, but that's what I'll say. Or I'll blame the dog. Well, you know what they say, crap rolls downhill. When you're at the top, you just push it downhill. Problem is when you're both the top and the bottom of the hill at the same time. It is just a really icky version of Sisyphus. Well, I can't blame the cat, because the cat will blame the dog. But if I blame the dog will just, I don't know, scratch its belly, scratch its ear. It's just a half pipe, yeah, very much. Yeah, very true, Haskell. And you can never hide away from your boss. And you can never fully pretend to be working when you're not. Because your boss always knows. Unless you can convince your boss to play as well. It's not PG anymore, it's YouTube guidelines. So it's... So what would that be? YTG version. No, not in. Yeah. But if you're real management material, you'll always find a way to blame somebody but yourself. Even if you're the only employee, you'll figure it out. Whereas employees are, they have to figure out their work. Management will always figure out a way to blame somebody else. Or something else. And today we've got the big scary AI, so we can always just blame the AI. Bad AI! Making more work for me. Yes, a bad craftsman may blame their tools, but a good corpo will always blame they're tools. That's why most of them are tools. To the end. Alrighty.
Story number 2. Done. Dun, dun, dun.
Yes. Definitely blame the planets, because, sure. Look, if I could teach my furniture kung fu, I would. And to my utter horror, feng shui is not teaching a furniture kung fu. Although, I say that. The only one of my pieces of furniture that learned kung fu was the dining room table, and it attacks toes like a dog on a nice treat. Just every time I walk past, it ninjas itself in front of my toe and just stands there and takes it. And then it sits there smugly looking at you, going, huh? You forget about me? There you go. Okay, so we're going to move this over here. We're going to go to stream mode. Let's move this down a bit. We want audio, we want video, recording audio, recording video. All right. Chat. I will see you on the other side. Greetings, ladies and metalgents, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet, read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called The Deal Made, written by Shady Stranger. To call the human ship cramped was an understatement. The humans built their ships with pure utility in mind, and she hated it, which meant her nephew was seething in discomfort. Her people's preferences for luxury and spacious living areas meant the corridors were wide and each room was larger than necessary. Her nephew, however, had decided to arrive with his fleet, but was the more honorable of her sister's children and agreed to parley. She found that fact unnerving, as he has absolute fervor for the Empire and his known temperament for those he deems lesser, which was everyone because he was a prince. Meeting these primates was also different, not in their design, but in their mannerisms. They acted with confidence and control, and every action was done with precision and efficiency. Nothing like a primitive thralls her empire raised in the past. This whole situation still felt completely in their control. With her nephew's fleet, the primates were outnumbered and outgunned. But still, this meeting on one of their frigates, in the dead space between both forces, felt like a trap. Valstream, remember, they have threatened to destroy the throne world, she whispered to her nephew, feeling like they were still watched, even in the empty briefing room. Her nephew looks at her with a small note of disdain. Relax, auntie. They are skilled, and their ship is impressive, if not claustrophobic. But I have yet to see any tech level superior to the development of the Limsk thralls. You don't believe their threats? She asked, confused. Of course not. What battle thrall race would stay their hand? Her nephew says back. Then the door opens, and the primate she recognizes as Admiral Kenji Watanabe. The leader of the human fleet walks in, and speaks with an unhappy tone. Humanity is not in the habit of killing civilians. Prince Velstrium Voljalmon Kazmaz. I must say that I am unsurprised and unhappy that our request for an envoy to come alone was ignored. But here you are, nevertheless. The human gestured to the chair. Sit, and we'll get this over with. She shifted in the chair beside her nephew. Its design was made with knowledge of her people's anatomy in mind, as there was room for a tail to rest comfortably. Her eyes studied this Kenji. Her eyes studied this Kenji up close, and she could see the Okay. Her eyes studied this Kenji up close, and she could see the subracial divides the file on them spoke of. He was a bit shorter than the other humans she saw while being escorted to the briefing room, and his eyes were a bit thinner, if that was possible. But the thing that Hales didn't show was how defined his muscle mass was. Despite the uniform and flight suit under it, she could see toned muscularity of a warrior. So, in terms you wanted, you asked for a 300 light-year bubble around the Earth of yours, and for us to agree to a 1,000 Earth years of peace and non-aggression treaty. Her nephew spoke slowly, entering the negotiation styling of her empire. Deals are made slowly, and with carefully made small moves to poke and push your position. That is non-negotiable, Kenji said with a harsh tone, his eyes watching her nephew like a predator stalking its prey, something that sent a chill down her spine. I'm afraid it must be. See, we have 5 Nephew started, but was cut off. 5 worlds with seeded races. The Tricks, the Kale, the Bower, and the Koal, and the Cool. We know, and we will be taking stewardship of them too, as part of the light years bubble, Kenji said, his hands resting on the table, fingers interlaced. Her eyes snapped to her nephew as she heard his low growl. He doesn't like being cut off or being told things like it's not an option to be changed. Careful, primate. We can always go back to shooting each other, her nephew said, with a note of malice in his tone. The name is Kenji, and if you are going to sit there and try and make this deal more favorable for your empire, you are sorely mistaken, Kenji says quickly, his eyes narrowing a bit as he glares at the Imperial Prince. I have given the orders to destroy this ship with the press of a button and launch an antimatter bomb to the core of your throne world star. And before you ask, it's amazing how far you can push an FTL device when you disable the safety features, he says again, with that cold and calculated tone he made this threat with before. Madman! Her nephew roared, jumping to his feet. You would doom your space sector too. No, because we aren't launching from inside the disk of our galaxy. We will be firing from above or below. It's hard to tell with 360-degree combat space, Kenji says, back with a hateful grin. Now sit down, shut up, and listen, he adds,
his tone and voice radiating the sheer willpower that devastates a space sector for some reason.
Kenji, she speaks a bit out of order, her mind trying to piece together why he was the leader and why he hates them so much to go to such lengths. Why are you offering us a chance for peace? Surely you would not have done... Surely you would have done away with it if you got this far.
Kenji shifted, leaning back. My family was from Tokyo, he said, but added as they seemed confused. Tokyo was the name of the city the first of your kind raised on Earth when he came to collect us. He saw that our world was in a state of peace and harmony, which was unacceptable to him. He launched an indiscriminate attack on our most prosperous and peaceful city to try and humble us. My whole family died because of him and your empire... and your empire's stupidity and ignorance. And your empire's stupidity and arrogance. His tone cold and firm. Despite the overwhelming support to simply annihilate you from the galaxy, my leaders wanted to try diplomacy one last time.
So, you are following orders? Her nephew asked slowly, a note of confusion and injury in his tone, upset to actually be talking to a soldier following another's direction.
My orders are vague and loose on this matter. I am letting this talk play out because I want to see if my late brother thought that we could have been friends. I am letting this play out because I want to see if my late brother was right in thinking that we could be friends, Kenji said back. Besides, your ships are a joke, and your war doctrine is, well, I wouldn't even bother with fighting even a small war with it.
I see, her nephew said, before standing up. I don't think I can sit here and let insults and threats go unanswered. This negotiation is over, and it's clear that there is no topic that you're willing to compromise on. Wait, no, she says, watching her nephew leave the room. Her eyes turned to Kenji. Please, just give me a day or two to talk with him. He's young, prideful.
It's okay. He isn't the person that can accept this deal. He is just the figurehead of these talks, Kenji said, his eyes locked on hers. She felt a bit uncomfortable with this assertion. She was a part of the Mother Council, but none should know of it or their existence outside the nobles and royals. How did you know that? Kenji smiled a bit wider. Did you think espionage and subterfuge are things we didn't develop? He asked calmly.
I see. My people have deeply underestimated your kind, she said with a sigh and sat down, tapping her communicator to have her lieutenant jam her nephew's communications. So, what exactly does humanity want?
The terms we set, nothing more, nothing less. The bubble we choose will give us a border with your neighbors, yes, but we will not allow foreign militaries to travel our space. So you don't need to fear a sudden attack by the Valaris. And the table will be opened... And the table will be open to setting up trade and more. Peaceful friendship, if your rulers listen closely to the Empress.
Kenji said back as he sat too, his hands interlacing and eyes observing her closely. She sighed again. Her people's ancient culture calls for them to listen to the Council of Women, but with the vast expansion into space, such traditions had fallen a bit short in the greater empire, as men more often served as their war leaders and commanders. With more and more young men have done away with those traditions, claiming that the women did nothing to expand the empire and were dependent on men. That is a hard sell. The Emperor may agree, but we will need something from your people, she says slowly.
An army and trainers,
Kenji asked, guessing accurately the conditions for the peace treaty. Yes, we seeded your kind for a reason, and you have shown your skill and merit in combat. A peace treaty without something for the Empire would only leave a bitter taste in the mouths of the nobility, she said back slowly, not happy that they seemed to be aware as they needed to be to hold a higher ground in this deal.
United Earth is willing to agree to a mutual defensive pact for the sum of the non-aggression pact, but will not hand over our population into slavery. But Genji pulled out a crude data storage device and handed it over. These are our laws in regards to paramilitaries that your empire can hire at their discretion. They'll fight as long as you pay them. Are you suggesting we hire out your people to fight as mercenaries? She asked slowly. The concept was not foreign to her, but was also the driving factor behind the seeding of races. Why hire when you can enslave? And if you're going to enslave, why not tailor their genetics to a purpose? The paramilitaries on that list are ready. The paramilitaries on that list are ready. The paramilitaries on that list are already in the process of helping with the expansion of our holdings and will be more than happy to take payments in resources and goods that Earth will need in the near future, he said back, his tone calm and collected. Also, the first 5 are groups that have a strong code of conduct and honor and are impossible to buy out. Such paramilitaries will happily serve as both bodyguards and revolutionists. She thinks it over. The core issue to the winning of the power of the... She thinks it over. The core issue to the winning of power of females is... She thinks it over. The core issue to one... Whining. She thinks it over. The core issue to the winning of power of females waning. Waning? Waning. I have no idea what this word's supposed to be. She thinks it over. The core issue to the winning of humans. She thinks it over. The core issue to the whining. She thinks it over. The core issue to the waning of power of the females. She thinks it over. The core issue to the waning of power of females is the tight control males have on the militaries of their empire, but humans paid to undermine or remove such troublesome individuals would strengthen the Mother's Council's hold. I believe I can get this deal passed. Deal passed. End of story. It's Amazon, and it wasn't sold, per se. I suppose it is sold. When you can ask Amazon to narrate your stories for you, and you get a percentage of the royalties. Really,
Thank you for the gifted sub, Brian. It's very much appreciated.
Hydration.
Doesn't ring any bells, Lupus. But that doesn't really mean much. Unfortunately, most of everything is just kind of squished together in my head, and angry dog. Woofsy woofsy. I guess it's mostly a single narrative story, so it's pretty quick.
It's a redevoss.
Still angry dog. Alright. We'll wait for the doggos to calm down a little bit. Communicate. Be angry. Good morning, Phoenix. Hope you're doing well. Well, my reason is just I've read so much that it kind of blends together. Hell, I couldn't even remember the title of my favorite story. That's how bad it got. All right. I think the doggos are calmed down, so we can do the thing.
Greetings, ladies and... Oh, nope.
I caught it.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this Re-Tifos, where I take old stories that I've narrated and update them to modern standards. This particular story is called My Earthly, My Best and Only Friend, written by Regal Legal Eagle. I sat out the room, waiting for the doctor, and contemplated my life since I met my best and only friend. As an Archon, I figured I'd always live alone. Not only is it a profession that requires constant travel to fight injustice and help those in need, but Kernick, in general, are very solitary creatures. We'll go dozens of cycles before seeking out a fellow Kernick for socializing. We're the oldest intelligent species, and have been protecting the galaxy for a very long time, so we're sort of used to it. So when I came across that terribly damaged and nearly prehistoric freighter, I had no idea that one day would change my life forever. I had no idea that day would change my life forever. I found him, the only survivor of a Kraken attack. They're basically our mirror.
They travel in massive packs and do as much damage and cause as much pain as possible. Well, he looked strange as hells to me, but the computer said that he was from some planet called Earth that had only just barely figured out FTL travel. They didn't even have an effective translator yet, so communication was very difficult. I knew I should try to take him home, but the Kraken horde was heading back to their territory, and I knew this was my only chance to catch them for at least 5 cycles. So I tried to explain to him what was going on. It was easy, but I got the idea that he wanted to go with me, so off we went. At the beginning, it wasn't too easy. Koenig have much more sophisticated digestive tracts, and biology in general. It was a messy few days until we sorted out the bathroom, but we got that worked out soon enough. Now, I understand he wanted to go with me. Now I understood that he wanted to go with me, but I thought just as a civilian. I figured that I'd leave him in the ship while I did my job. But by chance, I took him with me to visit a market world and the sights in the cloud. Well, wouldn't you know it? We were less than a quarter rotation when some punk steals from a vendor. I was thinking that I would just let the locals deal with it. But the Earthling, he went after that punk like lightning. I was impressed as hell. After that, I started to bring him along more often, and that's when we really started to get close. He wasn't sophisticated, and he certainly didn't take flack from some of the prisoners. I had to pull him off a few criminals that really pissed him off. Good thing the code allows for a bit of leeway in culturing new recruits for primitive worlds. Good thing the code allows for a bit of leeway with culturing new recruits from primitive worlds. Well, soon enough, we tracked down the Kraken horde, and not only did we get them together, he saved my life. The Kraken are rarely interested in more than chaos and trouble, so they got the drop on me when their boss actually laid a trap. It seemed like he wanted one of us, Koenig, for some nefarious purpose, and an Archon was all the better. Well, that totally missed out on my friend, the Earthling. They totally dismissed someone from a primitive world and didn't tie him up or anything when they tossed us in a cell. He had me out of the bindings in no time, and then slipped out and then managed to steal the passkey from me. And get me out of there. The looks on the faces when I burst out, fully armed, and with my best friend at my side. We both got commendations after that, and he was made an honorary Archon. Communication was still problematic, but we'd figured out how to convey basic things, and they let me keep him as a partner, especially since it was hopeless trying to teach him how to fly the ship. I'd heard other Earthlings were good pilots, so maybe he just didn't get it. Either way, we got him some custom gear, and together we became unstoppable. He was always alert in ways that surprised me. Not only was it impossible to sneak up on this crafty bastard, but he was the best tracker I've ever met. No criminal could shake him on the planet. Even when we were at that diplomatic dinner in Turvix 9, he could tell the princess was having some sort of health issue way before the rest of us. We were all focused on the dinner and conversation, but since he couldn't understand us, I guess he noticed how funny she was acting. Saved her life. They made him a knight after that. I'm not even a knight, and this Earthling got that honor. No one from Earth ever tried to track him down, and I got a sense that after that attack on the ship, all he had was me, and all I had was him. We were close, very close. I'd bitch at him about the code, or regulations, or politics, and he'd listen and just make me laugh with his antics. I'm sure he understood very little of what I told him, but it was so nice to have someone to talk to. And he'd get emotional at times. He didn't like some planets, and a few creatures obviously made him nervous, so he'd stay close to me. I also got the sense sometimes that he was lonely, but then we'd exercise and work out to stay sharp, and he seemed to be back in the game, dedicated to the job. I understood that feeling all too well and respected it.
15 cycles we were at it together. He did more to advance my career in 15 cycles than I did on my own in 20. I was offered several chances to move up, but I always turned them down. Then, about a month ago, he started acting weird. I could tell that he didn't want me to worry, tried to be the same best bud a Koenig could ever have. But something was up. I finally took him to the hospital, even though he begged me not to. He always hates hospitals for some reason. Probably all the machines and needles freak him out. I figured there was something simple, an injury from one of our cases that didn't work right. The file said humans live about 100 cycles, so I thought we had tons of time left. But the doc came out and pulled me aside. I couldn't believe it. Cancer. I thought we rooted that out centuries ago. Well before I was born. Well, the problem was, we fixed the genes. Earthlings were brand new to the greater galaxy, so we didn't have time to fully map their genes out and figure out how to fix them. The drugs they used were mostly effective for their own treatment, but we were on the other side of known space. It would take months to get him out there. I couldn't even tell him what was happening, since the few translator devices that had been made were only given to diplomats, and also on the other side of known space with the drugs. I started to break down, as the doc told me that my best friend was in the later stages as well. Either he'd been having trouble far longer than I noticed and didn't tell me, or hadn't himself felt it until just recently, and it was too late to operate. That the cells had spread. What kind of way was that for him to go? I'd seen him attack creatures twice my size, let alone his. He had an arrest record and commendation list longer than my arm. And he was going to lose to cancer. We had a final week where I did everything I could. He was better than me about the whole situation. But with the drugs they were giving him, he'd probably thought that he was getting better, not worse. I made sure to find some of his favorite food, took him to do some of the things he loved. I did everything I could for my best and only friend. But at the end of the week, I could tell, even with the drugs they were giving him, that he was feeling worse again. He couldn't go on. So I took him back. The doctor got him all set up, and that's what I was waiting for. They'd set up a machine, and since they couldn't explain it to him, I'd have to be the one to press the button. They told me that he'd just drift off to sleep in peace. It was better this way. I really didn't think anything about the situation could be described as better, but they were the doctors. Finally, he came out and nodded to me. I collected myself, trying to remain strong for my friend. Walking into the room, I saw him look up, already happy to see me. I already had tears in my eyes as I sat next to him. "Hey, bud." Woof! The stupid bastard was wagging his tail and licking my face like always. Hells! I couldn't do this, could I? But he was in pain. My guts twisted and churned. I know we can't communicate well, but I know you're in pain, bud. I choked back the words as I heard his tail thump against the blankets. How was he so strong? He tried to crawl closer, and I just stopped trying to talk. I clutched him in my arms, hearing the continuous thump of his tail. Finally, as we hugged, I pressed the button. He was licking my face right up until he fell asleep. My best and only friend. I was a mess for rotations after that. I barely had the ability to submit the paperwork for his ceremonial burial back on the Archon HQ planet. I didn't know how I'd go on without him. Part of training to be an Archon involved learning how to deal with loss. But that had been cycles ago. And why would I pay attention if I was always going to be alone? The next few days were horrible for me. The funeral was worse. I didn't hold it together. I'm sure that I was a disgrace as an Archon to have such emotion exposed and open, but the others supported me through it. 2 rotations later, however, I was told the Earthlings had sent their ambassador. Apparently, I had some sort of misconception about Earthlings. The last thing I needed was some sort of politician. The last thing I needed was some sort of political snafu. When I met the ambassador, however, they were accompanied by some creature I'd never seen, and the ambassador was so young. As young as my best friend when I met him, so full of energy and excited. That's when the other creature spoke up. "That's not the ambassador. I'm the ambassador. That's a puppy, and your new partner." End of story. It's my pleasure, Phoenix. It sounds rough. 4 days of tabletop gaming. Rough in a good way, I suppose. Homeward Bound was a pretty cool story. Well, good movie. Not so much the sequels, but the first one was pretty funny. And heartwarming. Well, I suppose it's time. Are we ready? There we go. Nice crack. Cheers, everyone. Energy drink for the win. I find it funny that the 3 most famous Scottish accents are Sean Connery, Shrek, and Scotty. One is a Canadian, one is an American, and one is actually Scottish. Excuse me. All right. I'm going to take a quick bathroom break. So I'll be right back. I'll leave you with some sea shanties. And away we go.
Sail on a ship to the stars we shall roam through the vastness of space. No place like our home. Hoist the sails high, let the solar winds blow. This cosmic sea shanty is a tale we all know. Navigating constellations, charting the unknown. With the stardust in our veins, we are never alone. From the Milky Way shores to the depths of black holes, we'll sing our sea shanty as the universe unfolds. Sail up high to the galactic sky on our moonlit voyage. We'll keep reaching high. We're sailors of the cosmos, a crew full of might. Let's sing this sea shanty under starry night's light.
Hoist the sails and let the wind guide our way. We're the spacemen sailing the cosmic bay. From Jupiter to Saturn we'll deliver our freight on our starship, sailing through the interplanetary strait. With a hardy crew and a cargo of dreams, through the nebula's mist we'll forge our own schemes. In the vastness of space where no man has been, we'll navigate, chart the unexplored galactic highway. Heave ho, mateys, upon the starry sea. We're the spacemen sailing through infinity. With our voices loud and our spirits free, we'll voyage across the celestial sea. Oh, voyage across the celestial sea.
Alrighty. I'm back. Chewy. There we go. Story number next. Let's start working. Merida from Brave. I think I've watched it once, many years ago. I don't know whether it was particularly popular in America. Fair enough. Good luck, Donald. Hopefully there is some noms to be had with cheese and bacon and cheese and bacon. Just cheese wrapped in bacon, wrapped in cheese, wrapped in bacon.
Searching for that precious ore, pickaxes and heavy hearts, we're the miners of the cosmic shore. On this barren land, we march as one, unearthing treasures under the sun. In the created plains where no one dreamt, we're the pioneers on this frontier we're sent. Mine on the red planet soil, drilling down, down, down for the treasures we toil. With grit and determination, we push ahead for Mars, hidden riches we're truly bred. We're truly bred.
Sailing through the cosmos, it's my final voyage, leaving Earth behind, seeking stars to my homage in the depths of space, where no one can hear. I'll sing my space shanty, let the stars draw near, raising up the anchor, setting sails to the sky, bidding farewell to no tears left to cry.
We'll go with F1. M3.
As my compass, I'll navigate to the outer realms where my fate awaits. Oh, I'm a stargazer, drifting through the night, chasing dreams that sparkle like stars shining bright. I'll serenade the heavens with my
That sounds interesting, Nigel. Mandarin cheesecake. Good morning, Kandaria. Hope you're doing well. Awesome. Pancakes and bacon makes a great breakfast. Excuse me. I'm allergic to vegetables. I break out and every time I have one. Okay, that is the next story done. Probably the last one for the day, I think. You'll see how the voice is faring at the end, but it's getting a bit tired. Alrighty, work mode, recording, and away we go. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this Re-Tifos, where I take old stories and update them to modern standards. This particular story is called Dakar, or Dakar, written by Plusium.
Before we start, I just wanted to thank Mr. Anderson for being here with us. His input will be quite enlightening. It has been quite a while since the last contact, right?
The lead creature asked, the skinny chitinous creature, before it turned to face the significantly shorter and squatter accomplice.
Yes, about 5 centuries, if my memory serves me correct,
replied the squatter insect creature in question. Mr. Anderson merely smiled and nodded.
Anyways, gentle beings, if you would follow me.
The large creature gestured. The large creature gestured at the 2 armored-up beings guarding the doors to the facility.
As you will all know, and I'm sorry for repeating this, but it does help to hear it as you go, this is the largest public secret this side of Alpha Centauri. I'm sure that you've all heard rumors about what goes on in here, and many of you probably have moles, but the feds have apparently decided that our nation needs a little bit of morale boost, especially considering all those terrorist attacks. The attendant beings all quietened the instant they entered the cavernous vicinity. On display in the massive hangar were a collection of pedestals, equally spaced out, almost like an art gallery. Perched on said pedestals were ambiguous items in ascending size, tiny to gargantuan. Anyway, this is the first item here, the last resort. Now I may not exactly inspire confidence when the first thing I show off is essentially a suicide device. Let me assure you, it is anything but. This tiny thing here can be slipped easily into any location by an infiltrator and be detonated remotely with a yield of up to a ton of TNT. The presenter turned to Mr. Anderson. This is what you humans use, yes? Anything to add?
Mr. Anderson smiled a wry smile, cleared his throat and began, Yeah, only for the larger yields, though. It is quite nifty, though I do question the design. Sure, the coin shape is rather clever, but we do live in a cashless society. A piece of litter or gum would be far less likely to draw attention. As it is, someone would probably take it home, thinking that they found an artifact or something. The presenter froze for a moment.
Surprisingly insightful. I'll be sure to pass that on to the boys at R&D. Anyone else?
He was met with a collection of species-specific shakings of the head.
All right, on to the next one.
The walk to the next pedestal was rather quiet, filled only with muffled whispers from the assembled journalists and scientists.
Right, this is a revolutionary new combat device. It is a
tear gas grenade. A rather vicious choice if you're going to be using it for crowd control, Mr. Anderson cut in.
Oh, you've seen this before?
Yeah, we had them since pre-space. Had a lot of civil unrest back then.
Impressive. It took quite a while for the engineers to make them suitable for crowd control. They worked, but a bit too well. Any questions?
What is the purpose? What purpose would these serve against terrorists if they are designed for crowd control?
A small rhino-like journalist spoke up. Good question. As I said earlier, these are a toned-down version. Full-strength versions work great for safely eliminating a terrorist compound without losing men. The journalist seemed aghast.
You're talking about chemical warfare?
Oh, don't be silly. It's not fatal. Besides, who cares about a couple terrorists? The presenter response hardly seemed to soothe the journalists.
Hey, kid,
Anderson called out, inspecting some random trinket on a smaller platform. Yes?
Yes?
The angered journalist responded.
Ain't a war crime if it ain't wartime.
Anderson snorted to himself at the writer's confused expression. Suppressing a smirk, the presenter quickly asserted control back over the crowd. Right. Assuming that is all, we've got a good while to go, and the brass only gave us an hour, so we should move along now. The whispers were a bit louder this trip. When they arrived, they were greeted by the sight of what looked to be a green lunchbox on stilts. Before we start, any comments to make, Mr. Anderson? The presenter arched the side of his brow. Anderson cracked a smile.
Of course. Mind if I examine it?
Taking the wave as a gesture of assent, Anderson eased the metal case off the pedestal.
Looks like a claymore to me. Just weird and science-ified. Don't see why, though. Explosions do a way better job at wounding people.
Wounding people? Mr. Anderson, I'm afraid you don't understand. This device is meant to kill as many terrorists as possible, not wound them. A wounded soldier can still fight and harm Federation personnel.
True. I suppose with modern medicine it's not as hard to treat injuries as it once was. It used to be you'd blow off a couple of the enemy's legs, and then half their resources would go to be keeping them alive. Way easier on the enemies if you just killed the feckers.
The room was silent. Well then, I suppose that's all you need to know about that. It's mine, it vomits plasma. It's a mine, it vomits plasma on everything in front of it. Very deadly. Moving on. The walk was full of whispers and murmurs. Anyways, this is the latest model in the assault technology. The GRT-X assault rifle fires off a single burst. The GRT-X assault rifle fires off in single, burst, or full auto. Each magnetized plasma round contains 15 fefta of energy. Any questions? Good, let's move on. The presenter rushed.
Excuse me.
One of the journalists interrupted his swift walk to the next platform. Yes?
He looks like he wants to say something.
The journalist pointed at Mr. Anderson, who, at that moment, was making a point of examining his shoes. What is it?
Well, I'm not that much of a fan of plasma weaponry. Sure, they work great against flesh, but typically terrorists make a point of not running around in their birthday suits. I've seen particularly thick cardigans detonate pistol rounds early and end up with only minor burns on the victim. I just doubt that the thing can go through ceramic body armor.
I'm not sure whether to be flattered or insulted. I do believe you drastically overestimate our ability to carry something as heavy as ceramic armor for any length of time.
True, I suppose. You wanted to move on?
Yes, let's. The journalists didn't bother to hide their talks. I'm just going to let Mr. Anderson introduce this next one, since he seems to know so much about our weapons. The presenter stated jokingly.
You compliment me. I'm afraid I haven't the slightest clue what this is.
Anderson glanced at the strange lump of metal.
Yeah, I got nothing.
Not so all-knowing, after all. This is an energy field generator. It'll disperse any plasma projectiles within 15 FPA. No, it does scramble all electronics inside as well. Great for night ops. Any questions?
Will we be given more in-depth description of these afterwards? You seem to be skipping a lot of details.
Yeah, of course. All information and documents will be published shortly. As for the information, my apologies, but it's just lazy writing.
Excuse me?
I have a script, so I don't accidentally reveal something still classified. Apparently, I can't be trusted enough.
Oh, fair enough.
The next couple of exhibits were similar fare, until something caught Anderson's eye.
I'm sorry, but is that a fucking lightsaber?
He gestured to a familiar-looking hilt. The presenter grasped. The presenter grasped the hilt and pressed the button. The presenter grasped.
The presenter grasped the hilt and pressed the big red button. With a swoosh, a gleaming rod of white plasma leapt from the tip.
Great, isn't it? It can deflect plasma bolts and cut through solid steel.
Yeah, it's the dumbest crap I've ever seen.
Sorry?
I've got this in... I get this as a presentation of cool things to raise morale, but come on! That thing is a death trap. There is no safety, no guard, nothing to stop you lopping off your own limbs. Plus, no force means good luck moving it fast enough to block a bolt. Plus, there's energy, the heat, the storage, the handling. I could go on for ages. Who decided this was a good idea?
Rather than being incensed at Anderson's tirade, the presenter seemed mildly amused.
I believe the human ambassador bet the head of engineering a tenner, whatever that is, that he couldn't make one.
The collected journalist chuckled.
Ah,
Anderson paused.
yeah, that'll do it. Moving on.
He seemed somewhat keen to move on from his misjudgment.
So, what's that thing?
He pointed to what seemed like a Predator drone mounted on a platform.
That is the latest generation of close air support, capable of 10 kilowatts of output on a pulse laser. It can easily eliminate any hostiles in the area, guaranteed to be the best CAS in any given battle.
Boring. Wait until you see... boring. Wait till you've seen the restored A-10 in action. Then tell me about the best CAS.
If it's something that requires restoration, I can hardly see how it's an effective tool in today's age.
Are you kidding me? The only reason they stopped making them was it was too damn much. The only reason they stopped making them was it cost too damn much to transport the ammo they chewed through in space. 30mm shells at nearly 4,000 rounds per minute. Good luck surviving that. Plus, no fancy plasma engines and whatnot, so 90% of modern tracking equipment is null.
You certainly seem passionate. Tell you what, after all this, you can show me a couple of videos and I'll decide for myself.
Sounds good. Say, is that a tank?
Anderson pointed across the room at what seemed to be, well, a tank.
Indeed it is. A hover tank, actually. Shut it. Indeed it is. A hover tank, actually. Shut it. Indeed it is. It's a hover tank, actually. Shut it.
The presenter turned back to Anderson just as he was about to speak.
Whatever you're going to say, shut it. That thing there is the best of the best, top of the line, plasma rail cannon speeds of up to 50 R, not affected by terrain, 2 coaxial plasma repeaters. I can guarantee you humans have nothing that can top it.
Anderson paused for a bit.
You may be correct, if only on a technicality. When we got to space, most of our old hardware was decommissioned. It was mainly used for regional conflicts, and when every country is fecked off to another planet, skirmishes were few and far between. Besides, it was far too costly to fly a tank across the galaxy. As you know, better off using FTL missiles. I suppose we never got back to the old ways once our FTL got better.
And your point is? That's certainly a long speech with no real point.
But you see, my point is that we have nothing now to match that. Say, how well would that fancy heat-conducting armor fare against tungsten sabots going at Mach 5? Or how well does the underside handle a copper lance from an RPG? I'd wager that a railgun could go through over a meter of effective armor.
The presenter sighed.
Yes, very true. You humans always had a knack for overkill, especially wild planet side. One would think that you have enough firepower.
Bah! That's heresy. One can never have enough Dakar. One can never have enough Dakar. Not the Gao 8 or the or the Sravler Gustav, or the Tsar Bomb, or the Davy Crockett. Nothing. There is no such thing as enough Dakar.
The presenter shook his head.
You humans are quite strange.
You just wait until one of our military dick measuring competitions. That's where the real firepower is at.
Well then, allow me to call an intermission. I'll be here chatting with Mr. Anderson. Feel free to ask any questions on your mind or wander around. We'll regroup in 10.
End of story. End of story. There is no kill like overkill.
see.
I tend to say it like Dakar, which is a place with very similar spelling. But I will probably be proven wrong in the comments section. And then Dacha, which is weed or marijuana, but in South Africa it's called Dacha, is very similar. Except instead of K's, it's G's. What is today? Today is Tuesday. Fair enough. Fair enough. But pandering can also be a double-edged sword. Whoa. Itchy nose. I think I have another one in the tank. Excuse me. Yeah, if it ever happens, it'll definitely be unique, I'd imagine. I'm gonna minimize this. Looks good. I think this is mostly a single narrative story. M1. M1. Probably not. I have an attitude problem. So I probably wouldn't be the best person to represent humanity. My attitude problem is somebody else's problem. Why do I keep typing 10? Fingers are doing their own thing. Alright. That was pretty quick. Zoom zoom. Done. Mostly a single narrative story. Alrighty. Let's move stuff around again. You over here, going into there, recording video, recording audio. Nope, that's bad. Don't need to record the audio there. Need to open up a new window. Close the old one. I'm recording audio. Alright. Story number next. Greetings, ladies and milligans, and welcome to this Re-Tifos, where I take old stories and I update them to modern standards. This particular story is called Man in a Trash Can, written by Regal Legal Eagle. You get up every morning from your alarm clock's warning. Larry nodded to the start of the music, blowing a puff of smoke out of his nostrils, further smoking up his cockpit, as the scrubber hummed and whined to try to keep the atmosphere breathable, despite how much smoke he was pumping out. It was just another day for him collecting trash, and he had no reason to treat it any differently. He shifted the arms on his can, grabbing another old defunct satellite as he began to cut. Just give me a second. Spam. I'm recording all. That was a spam phone call. Fantastic. I love spam phone calls. It is a dragon. Anyways. He shifted the arms on his can, grabbing another old, defunct satellite, as he began to cut it into smaller pieces, with a plasma torch, so that it would fit better into the compactor. Plenty of Xeno species had the great fortune to make a very coordinated and orderly entrance into space. The Termic were not one of those species. Their homeworld was ringed in orbital debris from a hastily launch into space, followed by several decades of struggling to advance until they were discovered by the greater galaxy. As usual, in their attempt to better relations and open up more trade, the hegemony approached, proclaiming humans to be masters of trash cleanup after their own troubled bootstrap launch programs. Of course, all the hegemony's cleanup operations actually meant was a man, a can, and a compactor, which was where Larry came in. He collected the fragments of satellite and boosted a few kilometers to battered yellow compactor orbiting his. He collected the fragments of satellite and boosted a few kilometers to the battered yellow compactor orbiting near his position, letting the pieces go before the magnetic tractor beam started to reel him in. Before the magnetic tractor beam started to reel them in. If everything went well, he'd be done in about a year. Shifting the short stub of his cigar in his mouth, he let out another puff of smoke and began to boost off towards more garbage to collect. Overall, the job wasn't too bad. He had his own hours, didn't have to deal with crappy customers or bosses, and when the contract was complete, he'd make damn good money. But until then, he was out here watching the traffic flowing around the cleaned lanes to and from the planet, without a thought in the galaxy for the yellow can and compactor. He was still looking for an old Termic space station, orbital lifter, and even a full capsule. He was still looking for an old Termic space station, orbital lifter, and even a full capsule. He'd picked apart some of the old pre-hegemony stuff in the asteroid belt back in Sol, and had a little collection going. He liked to think that those early pioneers, how brave they must have been. How brave they must have been. How excited to be the first ones venturing forth into the void. Working as a garbage man was about the closest he could come to that feeling. All the expeditions were crewed by educated types with degrees. He didn't have one of those,
Instead, he had a rock ball scholarship, followed by a busted knee, followed by losing his rock ball scholarship. He could... rock ball. Instead, he had a rock ball scholarship, followed by a busted knee, followed by losing his rock ball scholarship. He could walk fine these days, but he sure couldn't play like he used to. Shrugging off the thought, he glanced at his watch. Another 2 hours of this, and he'd stop for lunch, and then another 5 hours, and he'd stop to sleep. Then wake up and start it all over again. That was the plan, at any rate. Someone had to haul in all the trash to make their planet safer to travel to, and he was that someone. As he was chopping up another satellite, however, he saw something jerk into reality not too far from his position. "Mother of God!" he muttered, and quickly stabbed the com button with a grubby finger. "Central Control, this is Trashcan. Do you read me, over?"
Oh, yes, we read you, Trashcan, over.
"I'm staring at a Thrasher cruiser, over."
The other line was dead silent as they tried to process that, and he stared at the death ship before him. It was sitting there for now, likely recovering from the skip drive before it would descend upon the planet below. He knew that Termic had a defense fleet somewhere, but he had heard that they were off running exercises or monitoring a border conflict or something.
"Did you hear me, Central? Gotta be at least a Class 7 cruiser. What defenders you got around here? Over?"
We don't have anything, Trashcan. Get out of there while you still can. We'll start the general alert, get traffic out of the safe lanes and away from the planet. Over.
Heck, this thing's only got impulse. It would take me 3 days to make it to the fecking moon. Crap!
He thought it over for a moment, and then briefly considered the spirit of the original human pioneers in space.
"I'll buy you guys whatever time I can. Over."
Come again, Trashcan? You're not Termac. Why are you helping? He could hear the shock, but was already turning off the comm to focus. He snapped his harness into place and then boosted towards the cruiser. It was just starting to move once more. Either they didn't notice his little cannon, or they didn't care. But he came in hard near the aft of the ship, and grunted as the can gripped the hull hard. And slammed into it before holding fast. Activating the plasma torch, he began to hastily cut a hole in the plating of the cruiser, making a rough circle before clamping a magnetic arm onto the center and jerking it free. He saw a puff of released atmosphere before the Thrasher in red combat armor came flying out, slamming off the can before tumbling into space. The ship shuddered then, and he could feel it start to slow, trying to veer away from the planet as they realized they now had an exposed engine compartment.
"Yeah, try entering the atmosphere now, you feckers."
Larry was about to start cutting away more plating when he saw one of the smaller cannons on the hull start to turn his way.
"Oh crap!"
He lifted the chunk of hull to one of his arms as a shield, boosting up towards the cannon while trying to keep from being locked on. There was a flash as the cannon fired, and then part of the arm jerked towards the cockpit. But the sounds were muted heavily in the depths of space. He could see the dent in the armor plating, but it looked like the cannon wasn't powerful enough to pierce it. At least, not on the first shot. He juked the can left and right to make it harder for the gunners to get a lock, thinking back on his days racing across the rockball field. Of course, back then, the other enforcers weren't shooting at him. There was another flash and a muted report of a cannon, but the chunk of hull that he was using as a shield held steady. Finally, he was next to the cannon, and he released a magnetic arm to let the hull float free, and he instead latched onto the cannon. The plasma torch quickly cut through the barrel of the cannon before he began to cut a hole on top of the cannon, yanking the plating free as he saw another puff of released atmosphere and another Thrasher go tumbling off into the void. He tilted his can up, looking inside the gun emplacement before quickly using the mag arm to grab one of the HE rounds he saw inside. There was a much bigger cannon just ahead of him now,
There was a... There was a much bigger cannon just ahead of him, down the hull. He saw it aiming up before a much bigger flash of light made him grunt and blink away spots in his vision. Looking past the gun, he realized that they were firing on civilian traffic, trying to free him. "Not today, you feckers!" Larry growled out and began to boost towards the bigger gun. He didn't see any smaller turrets able to focus on his little trash can, which was nice. As he made it to the bigger gun, he latched onto the base just in time for there to be another bright flash this time, able to hear the gun firing more clearly. If he simply popped open the big gun, they could likely get it working again. So instead, he moved the trash can up to the barrel, jamming the HE round into it, and hastily welding it into place, praying that they couldn't tell. He was just turning to boost away when he heard a plink, plink, crack, and saw a crack in his cockpit before the smoke began to get sucked towards it. "Oh crap!" He spat his cigar out, reaching back to grab his helmet, which he hastily jammed onto his head, sealing up his suit. Once he was sealed in, he slapped the emergency vent and released what little oxygen he still had in the cockpit before the glass shattered under the pressure. Looking outside, he saw thrashers on the hull with rifles firing at his can. He could hear the plinking noises as he began to see warning lights flash. He was pushing away from the side with the sabotage turret, trying to get behind the cruiser's conning tower. The explosion was more felt than heard, as his can suddenly tumbled and the galaxy spun around him before his can slammed into the base of the tower. Groaning at the force of the impact, he unfastened his harness and grabbed the emergency oxygen tank in his cockpit, slapping it into place on his back. Hearing the magnets guide into position, then slapping into place on his back, hearing the magnetic glide slide into there. Slapping it into his back, hearing the magnets guided into position. Then he grabbed a handheld torch and popped the hatch. Before pulling himself free. It wasn't often that he was out in the darkness himself, but here he was now, clinging to his wreck on the hull of the Thrasher cruiser. The larger cannon he'd sabotaged had been blown completely free, and he could see more dead Thrashers bouncing off the hull, taken out by the blast. Looking up the conning tower, he began to climb it, seeing the civilian traffic far in the distance fleeing the now wounded cruiser. He wasn't sure what else he could do, but he promised to buy them as much time as he could, and that's what he would do. As he climbed the conning tower, he stopped just beneath the bridge. He slipped around the back and then carefully made his way to one of the side windows. They hadn't sealed them for combat for some reason, probably because the Thrashers loved watching their victims die in real time. Sadistic bastards. There was 5 inside the bridge, and they hadn't seen him yet. 2 were arguing while others manned the terminals. He looked down at the torch in his hand for a moment, and then nodded. Quickly lowering his face shield to protect his eyes, he turned the torch on, seeing them all snap their heads around as he began to cut a circle in the steel glass viewport. He had just finished before he gave them the finger and smashed the circle with his elbow. This time, instead of a small puff, a steady stream of atmosphere began to get sucked out into space, and one of the Thrashers with it, yet again, then another. He could see one of the others gripping the console, reaching for some sort of switch, before finally the metal plating began to slide down over the viewports. A third Thrasher was just getting sucked out as the metal cut the Xeno in half, and Larry watched quickly crystallizing blood droplets spray out the remains.
Down below he saw more thrashers start to exit the airlocks, rifles in hand, and knew that it was time for him to go. He climbed on top of the conning tower and looked around for anything he could possibly see. Off the distance, in a clutter of orbital debris, he saw a circle. Circles were rare. He couldn't be sure about it, but he didn't have a choice, and jumped as hard as he could before letting his momentum take him away from the cruiser, before he activated the suit's nav thrusters. Watching the fuel gauge very carefully, he had to avoid some of the debris until he got closer to the circle. It was a station. Now to see just how lucky he was, he straightened his approach and slowed down with his thrusters as he got to the airlock. All the writing was in Termic, but he learned enough to get the job done. Twisting the emergency release, the outer door opened with a grinding wheeze before he slipped inside and then began to use the manual crank to close it. Before using the manual crank to get it closed. That done, he had to pull his oxygen tank free. Of his back and release just enough for the old computer to figure out the atmosphere was nearly equal. He saw the green light on the panel and cranked the inner door open before he slipped inside and shut it behind him. That done, he pulled his helmet free and began to laugh. The entire incident had taken him about 20 to 30 minutes, and here he was, likely in his final resting place. He finally stopped laughing and looked at one of the panels to check the oxygen level in the station. He had maybe 5 hours if he took it slow. But what then? What were the chances anyone knew where he was? The cruiser was still out there, and while he'd done damage and slowed it down, it was still active. He shrugged. He'd done all he could. Pulling a cigar out of one of his suit pockets, he chomped part of the end off, spitting it. Pulling a cigarette out of one of his pockets, he chomped part of the end off, spitting it out before gripping the cigar with his teeth and pulling out an old lighter. He loved the distinct clink that it made before he snapped the flint and began to puff away. He loved the distinct clink it made before he snapped the flint and began to puff away to get the cigar going. It probably wasn't a good idea to cut down his oxygen supply by smoking, but he was dead anyway, right? Once he had the cigar going, he wandered through the station to find another terminal and smiled as he found it. Pulling out a small device from his suit, he plugged it in and began to fiddle the controls. Until he could hear the broadcast ringing out around the station. It started with a guitar, then drums, and then finally, living easy, living free, season ticket on a one-way ride, asking nothing, leave me be, taking everything in my stride. Don't need a reason, don't need a rhyme, ain't nothing that I'd rather do. Going down, party time, my friends are gonna be there too. Then he began to sing along with the chorus. I'm on a highway to hell, on the highway to hell, highway to hell, I'm on a highway to hell. End of story. Okay, I think that's all the recording for the day. Still got some backgrounds to do. We'll just move to full mode. I'm going to put my glasses back on, but why bother with that? That's not good, Brian. Yes, all hail the trash man in the trash can. Savior of a planet. Triskaphobia? Triskaphobia. Triskaphobia. Not triskaphobia. Trypophobia. There we go. Sorry, random thing. Trypophobia. Anyways, that's not what I was doing. I want backgrounds. Oh, excuse me. Thank you for watching it, Banana. I'm glad you enjoyed it. It's an oldie but a goodie. How many stories did we do today? 5. Yeah, boss is definitely overworking me today. Excuse me. It is my pleasure, Donald. I'm glad that I've been able to entertain you. They are quite tricky. You never know when they're going to jump out and attack you with onions. Okay, so that's that. And we need to do some thumbnails. That's also interesting. We also got some thumbnails outstanding from last week because the AI was taking a break. So that's tonight's story. Thumbnail done. Thank you, Nigel. Much appreciated. Really? Well, I mean, you can use AI to generate stuff as well. Or just take a screenshot. Use an AI to scale it up. Flying dragon hidden neighbor. Good afternoon, Hemsy. I hope you're doing well. I'm glad they help you through the day. And I'm glad you enjoy the content. Five. We did 5 today. Push that little voice. Now it's a bit unhappy, but it's the only way to make it stronger is to keep pushing it. Well, let me spell neighbor correctly. Neighbor. Why does that look wrong? Neighbor. Google, tell me how to spell. Got the G and the H wrong way around. Fair enough, Hemsy, fair enough. Not yet, Nigel. Not yet. I mean, I'll have to first start off with Survivor Becomes Dungeon. Catch up, Epic Loot. Probably the new threat, which is the new species. Book 2. My spelling's up my arse today. Good morning, Vaka. I hope you're doing well. Okay. Well, it is very much appreciated. Any and all support is always appreciated. Right, so that was that. Imagine futuristic mailman. When yeah, so the book 2 is called The New Threat. Shh. Stop shouting at me. And she knows. Nigel, the Spiffle Monk is in all the games that are an alien plays ... and then the game name. I've narrated several of them. Alright, that is all the thumbnails done. Nope, still man and trash can. One more, man and trash can. Trash man. Trash. Says aliens. Enemies. Trash man trashes enemies. I don't have them off the top, but there are 3. Yeah, 3. There was one quite recently. Oh. Ow, just clicked my back. Okay, that is it. All thumbnails are now done. Done, done, done. Yeah, he's played several. Zomboid, Minecraft, something else. Factorio, I think. Anyways, oh. I'm going to call it a day, 3 hours, 5 stories. We definitely got some work done, which is awesome. Thank you for the gifted sub, Vaka. It's very much appreciated. I'll see you all tomorrow, same time, same place, 10 a.m. GMT plus 2. All right. I have no idea what the BPL is. But thank you for recommending me, so very much appreciated. Good morning, Vendor Ta. Ha 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 ha. Alrighty. I'll see you all tomorrow. Hope you all have a fantastic day. If you're at work, I hope your day is without incident and home time is speedy. And if you're at home, I hope you have a fantastic day. I'll see you all tomorrow.